welcome to the first episode of Art Hat, in which I pull whatever I feel like out of a hat, which is basically whatever I happen to be working on at the moment, and then you get subjected to me babbling for 10 to 20 minutes. People, for whatever reason, they like to watch others draw, color, what have you. It's a soothing sort of thing, so sit back and be soothed. Our character today is Zeva the Wolf. It was requested by a person with the name of Zeva the Wolf. You'll see me occasionally flashing over to the other drawing. That's theirs. Anyway, I will link to them at the end. A little bit about this program, if you're wondering what's going on there. This is Affinity Photo. You can use Photoshop brushes in it, at least the older ones, the ABR files. The newer brushes have like a tool preset file that comes with it, and Affinity doesn't read those, at least not yet. But otherwise, it's at least from what I can tell, I haven't actually used Photoshop um, since CS2. Like that's what I had before I got Affinity Photo, and I got it because it has oh that selection brush that you can use. That's how old CS2 was. They did not even have a selection brush. Um, so comparing this to like modern day Photoshop, I don't really know what the comparison is like whatsoever. I just got it because it was cheap and I didn't have to do a subscription. And my computer is unfortunately of the age where even if I wanted to do a subscription to Photoshop, Photoshop's like, "Psh, what are you using? We don't compute with that." So couldn't even have it even if I wanted to. The line work you see is actually done in Krita, which is a free painting program, and they have really good you can't really import brushes into Krita, which is a downside, but what they have in there is like really, really good, especially if you don't have a very steady hand. It makes really smooth lines. Whatever kind of stabilization they have in there is just like really good. Um, anyway, for this entire thing, I'm mainly using two brushes. One is a watercolor simulation type brush. It kind of layers in the way you would expect watercolor to do, even if it's nothing like actually using the real thing. But it's kind of a misnomer anyway. The whole term digital painting or drawing, it's really its own medium. That's nothing like drawing with an actual pencil or painting with actual paint. Oh, if only because you can't erase ink. Anyway, so I use it's a watercolor type brush, and then the other one is a fur brush, which I'll have to dig up. I got it for free off DeviantArt. It's like a hair fur type thing. And since we're just babbling about what's going on, the trick to it, because the first time I ever used it, I was like, what the hell? How do you draw fur with this? Is you put it on a separate layer and then you erase parts of it, because it's stringy. You just kind of string it along and then you erase parts of it as you go. And then, like, fiddle with the opacity of different areas to give that shine effect. It works pretty quick, and you don't really have to know much about painting fur, which is good, because I don't. Okay, so kind of going back to that idea of, you put some stuff down and then you erase, and you put some more stuff down and then you erase. That's really like all digital coloring is. You put down some lines and then you put down some darker lines and then you put down some lighter lines, and you kind of try to think about where your shadows are coming from. In this, the lights kind of come in like, I guess the idea was kind of like sunlight, so it would be higher up, not directly over his head, but fairly much. You don't really have a whole lot of shadow quite yet. And then I just streaked in a bunch of fur here and there. And then here's me doing the little erasing back parts. Um, Yay. And then kind of leaving some like white. Um, Part of the original sketch is actually still there. I did the sketch on paper, did the lines in krita, and then kept part of the original like sketch scan still in there. That's why it kind of looks textured um, when I erase. So anyway, um, so yeah, I'm gonna do some music now. Background to this I started with is a couple of textures. One's literally a photo of some toned sketchbook paper I have, and then the other was like blended together with some photos. I mean, hang out on DeviantArt long enough, you'll like, textures are everywhere. They really help a lot. So there's that kind of idea to give it that kind of more realistic sketch quality, so that also if you erase a bit or lower the opacity, you get a little bit of that paper feeling behind it. Um, and There's surprisingly little to say about coloring, in all honesty. You just kind of have to play around till things look good. It's like make this area darker and this area lighter. Um, oh, with the watercolor brush, if you're using it, the trick, because you get streaks every time you pick it up. If you pick it up and then, like, say you color a bit, and you pick up and then you color some more. So the idea is to color the entire area without lifting the stylus on the tablet at all, and then come back in and you can make things darker. It's just, yeah, a lot of tiny little minute decisions. This, by the way, everybody looks like they're total badasses when you speed up any kind of art process. Like, oh yeah, I can totally sketch. Look how quick it's going. This is like times four. Yeah, I'm also kind of slow in general, I think, than most people. See like these speed paints, and people are like, look what I did, it's beautiful, I did it in 20 minutes. Or they'll do this like ultra realistic crazy, wonderful looking piece, and it took them like an hour and a half. And I'm like, yeah, I did some stuff that doesn't suck. It took 2 hours to color. I'm like, yeah, this actually took longer than 2 hours to color this because I kept getting up and moving around um, and watching YouTube. Um, but whatever. I think it's time for a dog break now. So I've skipped ahead to the shading part, and essentially I just made a layer and set it to multiply. Picked a cool color, in this case a purple, and set the opacity somewhat low so it would blend. And then you just kind of flit around, finding where the shadows need to be darker. Then for the highlights, and I actually totally stole this idea from another YouTuber. Um, Make a color dodge layer. Ooh, sometimes you use screen. Very low opacity, and just kind of put in some highlights here and there. It's not as shimmery as my Man Crush Ross, but gets the trick done. Here I was just adding a little bit more contrast. I actually did it in the color balance adjustment, which is a first for me. Set to screen, and then you can go into the settings and get it so that the layer only affects your highlights, not your darks. That's what that little grid was that popped up. And then last but not least, I always go into Nix plugins, which is actually a photo filter thing. Google created it. It's just Google search Nix, N-I-K, and they should pop up. You can download them for free. And the majority of them actually work in Affinity Photo. There's a few that are a little buggy. They were actually created for Photoshop. Um, but it's just nice. It gives you, you can do a reflector effect and add a nice vignette. You probably get the same with some gradient tools, but Nix seems to make it a little faster. All right, and yeah, so it's the obligatory like, share, subscribe if you want to. If you totally hated this, I'm sorry. You can leave, you know, and never come back. Anyway, if you guys have any kind of like questions about anything you've seen on screen or art related or whatever, yeah, let me know in the comments. I like questions. I do stuffs. Okay, bye.